I was thinking about this NFL transfer portal, the one that Connor Orr was talking about when he was on the show a couple of weeks ago. And I know that when this thing started to pick up legs, people were talking about Justin Fields could be leaving. You know what? It dawned on me last night that this would probably work in the Bears' favor. Like we talk about, like, Justin Fields should leave. No, no, no. What about all the guys who would want to come and play with Justin Fields? Did you not see Jamison Williams' face when he was drafted by the Detroit Lions? Do you think that's not a guy who would love to transfer over? Kyle Pitts, who's been working out with Justin Fields. You don't think he would want to get out of Atlanta? So let me tell you, everybody who wants to use this as an opportunity to take shots at the Chicago Bears, I don't think it would work out the way that you would want it to. And you know what? I think especially with the way the Bears are looking, the trajectory of the team right now, there is something starting to build. And something that is also starting is this show. So, Sammy, why don't you go ahead and roll the animation?
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to the Sick Podcast. It's me, Adam Rank. Huge show for you today. And I know they say that every time, but this time I really mean it. The voice of the Bears, Chicago, the voice of the Chicago. Listen, I'm already excited. The voice of the Chicago Bears, Jeff Joniak, will be joining us here in a matter of moments. The Bears rookies will be reporting to Hallis Hall this weekend. I want to talk a little bit about Ryan Tannehill. A lot of cool stuff going on both in the NFL and with our Chicago Bears. But right now, I'm excited for our guests. And I'm here to tell you, I have the opportunity to listen to every single voice in the NFL. I hear them all. And I got to be honest with you, this is something that I discovered 5-6 years ago. Now, NFL Game Pass, I don't usually shill for a lot of NFL products that we do. NFL Game Pass is awesome. And one of the things, the greatest discovery, even more so than the all 22s and everything, is that you're able to hear the home calls of your favorite team. If you're living in Idaho and you want to hear Matt Money Smith call the Chargers, you could do that. And of course, I have for the last 5-6 years, I've been listening to Jeff, and I will sit there. I have a command center. I have the red zone up, and I don't have them on yet because I don't want to make them blush, but I have the red zone up. I got the Bears game on. I got another game on, and I'm listening to Jeff the whole time. And I am going to tell you right now, he is the best in the business. He is the best voice of the NFL, and he is joining us right now on the Sick Podcast. Jeff, I am so excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for humbling us with your presence.
Man, you're way too kind, but I do appreciate it. Thank you for listening. I don't take it lightly. It's humbling for sure. So good to talk to you. I know you're passionate about the navy blue and orange, the beloved. So let's break it down.
Let's do it. It's, you know what? I'm excited for this team, and I'm curious to get your take on this. Obviously, Ryan Poles just completed his first draft. What are your early impressions of him and how he's been doing on the job?
You know, he's steady, cool as a cucumber. He may be youthful in terms of that position, and it's his first experience as being in charge, but he's had a ton of experience. He's a former player, so that helps. And one that was in the trenches, so that helps even more. I like having an offensive lineman, and he surrounded himself in that front office. Ian Cunningham, his right-hand man there, assistant general manager, also a former offensive lineman. So I'm a big believer, and you spent some time talking with me about this on our own shows, but yeah. I love old-fashioned football, grind it out, begin in the trenches. You build your offensive and defensive lines like Jim Finks did back in the 80s, and that led to the Bears Super Bowl team in 85. And I'm a run the ball guy. Now, I know that flies in the face of a lot of guys that want the aerial show, but right. I do believe you can win a Super Bowl that way. And I think that'll be proven out down the road as well around this league. It's not just throwing the football. It's winning in the trenches and having a running game to help a young quarterback like Justin Fields.
Yeah, and it's you sit with Tom Thayer over and over. So obviously you love the offensive line, and there's nothing wrong with that. The Bears did not take an offensive lineman in the first 3 rounds. They added a lot on day 3. We obviously we got 2 good ones last year with Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borum. How do you think the offensive line is shaping up at the moment?
It is a wait and see proposition. I mean, Matt Eberflus has gone as far as to say, talk to me in week 1. And that may be the case. I mean, they have a luxury right now because this is a gigantic puzzle right now. They don't even have 90 men on the roster just yet. So this roster is going to change, in my opinion, a lot. I think about John Schneider in Seattle when they started with Pete Carroll, and it was you may know the number of transactions that happened.
I think it was like 212. Like it was an insane amount of them.
I think it was 500 over 2 years. I'm not joking. Look it up.
No, I agree. I think I undersold it. Yeah.
Yeah. So these guys are going to find what works for them moving forward. And it's not all about right now. And find out what you have. And if you're going to need to add, with guys being cut, I mean, there's a lot of veterans still on the street too. And there'll be a lot more after the end of training camp. I think the vets in this league have realized in the last few years that they're on the short end of the stick. Yeah. And there's a lot of good players still out there that still can play. But I'd rather they find young guys and teach them. They feel this coaching staff is an outstanding teaching staff. So let's mold them into the Bears that you want them to be moving forward. So the offensive line right now, they're starting out with Borum on the left side, Tevin on the right side. But we'll see what these new 4 guys come in. This is a deeper draft. Offensive linemen, these 3 of the 4 offensive linemen ran sub 5-second 40. So they're athletic. Yeah. There's some dancing bears in there, but some are pretty raw, and they're going to be put in different positions. I think they can all probably move inside if necessary, and a couple of them can be outside at tackle, and we'll see where they start this weekend. But I'm excited. Also for Doug Kramer, a 5th round pick out of Illinois, a 6th round pick out of Illinois. There was 11 picks. I still don't have the rounds.
There was a lot of them.
It was just a blur, but this is a guy's just love. And he's like you, Adam. He's bear crazy and has been since birth. So that's a kind of a unique situation because he literally loves the Bears. So this is a great opportunity for what has been described, and he probably grimaces when he hears it, an undersized center, but a really smart player, and started a bunch of games at U of I, 48 games.
Yeah, he's a really good football player, and I think that was one of the steals of the draft. And I think that I kind of like the approach that he took. I know that everybody. It's a departure from previous regimes where you would have possibly traded up in the first round. But I think that trading down and getting all those draft picks in the 3rd round and building the depth, outside of Chad Reuter from the NFL Network, I don't know a lot of guys who really appreciated what he did, but I thought it was the best way to possibly go with this draft.
He kind of painted the picture really before the draft with the league's required news conference with the media, and he was fairly transparent. Sometimes you look with a wary eye and say, it's just GM speak or personnel speak, but he basically said, yeah, hey, listen, I'd love to add picks. Didn't say how he was going to do it, when he was going to do it. And I brought this up. I interviewed Ryan on Monday up at Hallis Hall for one of the Bears sites. And I said, the draft board's a living, breathing thing. Yeah. And you have to treat it like that. And so he let the draft, as he put it, he listened to the board. And I really believe that you put so much time into that board, you can overdo it every year if you let yourself. And I know that some GMs do. And you could stare at it and think and overthink and, just let it talk to you. And that's what he did. He seems like a very level-headed, calm guy, and he let the board talk to him. So as opposed, I know the whole wide receiver thing's going to come up at the top of the draft. Why'd you go with 2 defensive backs? Right. Hey, I'm sitting here, and I'm not just saying this because I got this on my shirt.
Right.
I love safeties. I think you have to have a bad man back there at safety who is going to set the tone, and maybe Jaquan Brisker will be that guy moving forward, and the guy that's going to be, keep receivers' heads on a swivel, tight ends' heads on a swivel, make the big hit that's going to jar the ball loose, that's going to, start the momentum for the defense and give it a little bit more swagger. So drafting a guy in the 2nd round, I'm all for it. Years ago, George Payton was at the Bears, the current Denver GM, and I was looking at tapes for the draft, and I'm looking at safeties, and it was the year Mike Brown came out. And he said, tell me what you think. And Rogers Beckett, I think out of San Diego State. That was my guy. I loved the way he played. and he kept sending me this tape of Mike Brown. I go, not the fastest. Boy, he gets there in a hurry, and he's pretty nasty. And, they picked Mike Brown. The first day of rookie minicamp, Mike Brown was lining up the defense, barking at everybody. He set the tone. Mike Brown was a bad man in a good way. And it was one of my favorite players of all time for the Bears. So if a guy like Brisker can be that kind of guy to help set the tone for the defense, definitely needed corners. You had to have corners. There's good competition now, and I think Kyler Gordon will definitely compete for a starting job. So I'm okay. I'm okay with having those guys up top.
Now, I agree with you. I was one of those people. I'm probably a little bit more pass friendly, perhaps, than
you're younger than me.
That's okay.
I'm the old man
okay.
here.
It's okay. Listen, I love running the football, and I came into the draft and I said I want to draft wide receivers. That's the way I wanted to go. But I mean, Kyler, if you would have told me though that Kyler Gordon was going to be available at 39, I'd be like, okay, I changed my mind. And Brisker is a guy who, I'll be honest with you, Jeff, I've seen Penn State play. And now that we've drafted him, I've gone and looked at him. I love this guy. Right. I love that he's wearing number 9. It just seems right. Like everything about it. And I love the Mike Brown comp. And I think what a lot of people don't understand Mike Brown made a lot of plays, there was back-to-back weeks. It was a game
2001,
your first year, right? First year. Yeah. So Mike Brown makes those plays in back-to-back weeks, the Cleveland game, the one that probably everybody remembers. They're not flukes because he knows where to be on a football field. And it feels like Brisker is the exact same way.
And I think it'll help Eddie Jackson and vice versa as well. He had another Penn State guy back there at safety, and I thought that was the best of Eddie Jackson. Adrian Amos was back there, and they were very solid back there, and Eddie Jackson had his best years. So he's had a lot of different safeties come through, and I know there's a belief that, from some scouts and GMs, you can find safeties anywhere in the draft, and that's true. That's true,
Mm-hmm.
But go look at the playoff contenders every year and go check out their safeties. And I mean, we know the names. And I just really think that'll help a great deal moving forward. And Eddie Jackson is looking to have a huge year as well. So this is going to be what they hope to be, a takeaway defense. Put the pressure with a 4-man rush, make them come home and get that ball tipped up in the air and take some balls away. And then Jarrett loose as well. They got to tackle better and be nasty.
Absolutely. And you think about, I always hate the notion too, that they're not helping out Justin Fields because they drafted defense. But you look at games last year, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, if I'm not mistaken, if the secondary holds up in those games, they win. How does that not help Justin Fields?
Right. Listen, eventually you're going to look at Justin Fields and say, okay, how are you going to make us better now? Right. Mm-hmm. That time is coming. You got to rise all boats, but field position matters. There were so many games last year. He's taken over all the Bears quarterbacks, inside their own 10 or 15 yard line. And that's, long fields are brutal. The return game, set them up, take the ball away, set them up, sudden change, take advantage of it. And I don't know how good the defense is going to be in this new 4-3. There's going to be a learning curve for sure. But there's going to be some hungry guys that are looking to cash in down the road. There's some 1-year deals of younger guys that could really play themselves into a bigger deal. So Ryan Poles from day one said, hey, I want some guys with chips on their shoulders. And I know that's cliche. Almost every player that comes in the league has something to be upset about, right? That they want to make something better. Of
real or imagined. Yeah.
Yes, real or imagined. And I'm okay with that, but it's just the style of play. I would like the Bears to be what the city expects them to be. And I'm not just talking wins and losses. Be that nasty team that each week teams are going to kind of fear going into because they know they're going to be in for a tough day and it's going to hurt. Yeah. And they're going to be, and you look sometimes at teams that are physical teams, what the team that came and played, what their record is after they play the Bears. I want that to look ugly. Bears may not win, but I want them to set a tone like this is what we're going to be. We talk about, I'm sure you've talked about this on your show. I don't know if you just talk Bears. It looks like you do.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. But you close your eyes. What do you want a Bear to look like moving forward? I don't care what position. Could be Justin, could be the O-line, could be the defense, could be your return man. I want to close my eyes and know what a Bear looks like from this day moving forward. And it continues this way because Ryan Poles is doing this the way that I feel most GMs start but they sometimes have a hard time maintaining, is that I want consistency. I want to be an annual contender. And you can't have the huge dips. And frankly, the Bears have had a lot of huge dips. So you close your eyes, you know what a Baltimore Raven looks like. You close your eyes, you know what a Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the AFC North and the NFC North, you're expecting to have wars, right?
Yeah.
Just physical, nasty battles.
Teams that hate each other for real. Yeah.
I know this is somewhat of a fantasy for me, but I like the old,
it's not
the muddy field and, blood on your face, man. I mean, that's what I love, but we'll see.
It's not really a fantasy, and it really is like something the Bears that you want them to do. Like when the Ravens went into their draft and they took Lindenbaum and they took Kyle Hamilton, those were Ravens players. You're like, of course that's where they went. And I think with the first 2 picks, those are the kind of guys that we can look back on 5 years from now and say, that's a Bears type player. And I get it. I understand exactly what you mean. It goes through, and I'm more, the Lovie Smith era. Like, you knew what the Bears were all about. Like that annual contender. There was a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun in that when you first started off, like that was a lot of fun. Those teams were competitive every year. And I think that that's what Ryan Poles is going to do. Yeah. And I think that that's the direction. I do want to ask you though. So obviously they didn't take a wide receiver in those first 2 rounds, which is fine. Velus Jones, who over the last week, and now he's wearing 12, which is perfect. I don't know if it's because everybody has been acting like, I think people are making too much about his age. They're making too much about the fact that he was in college for as long as Tommy Boy or whatever. I have now grown to like, this might be my favorite player. What do you know about him?
Well, I talked to somebody in Tennessee, and they said once he got into the slot last year at Tennessee, he took off. I mean, that's where he thrived. And so he's a great kid. Grew up in Mobile, so he was around the Senior Bowl his entire life. So this is an emotional thing for him to be in the National Football League. He grew up, getting autographs from all his favorite NFL players down to the Senior Bowl every year, and now it's a reality, and he's here. I get the whole age thing too, but you know what? When the average is 3.1 years in the NFL, I can't worry about that. I just can't, because these things flip over quickly. So what can you give me for the next 5 years? All right.
And then we'll see. If he plays his if he plays his full 4-year contract, I think that's a win.
Right. And then, and we'll see where he's at, but he's got great speed. Obviously he's physical. He's, there's a lot of different, people have mentioned Debo. I can't do that. Debo's special. He's just flat out special, but I get the wide receiver who carries himself like a running back, great contact balance, hard to put him down to the ground. Will roll over you, and if he gets ahead of momentum, and that's who he is with the ball in his hands. So I think of Marty Booker back from those old days. Marty was just as fast, maybe had more lateral quickness, and Marty attacked the football. If this guy's going to attack the football and be hard to bring down to the ground, boom, I think that's a Bears win in the 3rd round. So, and he adds versatility because he can also be a gunner. And the special teams part of this is also significant because a lot of those guys on the Lovie Smith's team, they played special teams. I mean, Charles Tillman was outstanding on special teams. He didn't have to be. He put his hand up, put me in. So a lot of these college guys, they may not want to do that, but on this team, you're gonna have to do that. I think they do have some really potentially impactful special teams players in this draft class. Yeah, so I like Velus Jones. What did you hear? What have you heard?
I love it. Everything. I mean, he played at USC. And somebody had asked me about him on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. And I said, I really liked him coming into USC. He made big plays for the Trojans. And then he graduated, went to Tennessee. I didn't quite watch him enough last year with the Volunteers until, over the past week. I really like what I see. And I really like the fact that, even though we don't have the biggest names in our wide receiver room, but everybody has a role. Everybody's got something that they're going to specialize in. And I think that's almost as important. And when people talk about our lack of I say this, I'm sorry. I know you're an employee of the team. You can say I'm still going to say it. I'm sorry. I know that when I was on your show, I was doing that too. And I apologize to Tom. I apologize to Tom because he's got a Super Bowl ring. I'm like, but it's interesting because I think when you look at the totality of the offense and you look at David Montgomery and you look at Khalil Herbert and they picked up a couple of other running backs through the draft and through undrafted free agency. I'm like, I think this team's going to be successful. I think that there's enough there offensively. Listen, we might not go to the Super Bowl, but I think this team's going to be a lot more competitive than everybody else is letting on.
Well, it's going to be a process. The schedule is certainly going to be amenable to potentially that, although I don't put a lot of stock in that because who are you the week you got to play the team you're playing? What's the injury situation? What looks easy now may not be so easy, and nothing's easy. Let's be honest. You got to be able to protect your quarterback, take the ball away, and get some points on the board. So, Justin's going to get better in year 2.
Yeah.
There's no question. He's not looking over his shoulder. He's going to get better. And how can he develop the chemistry he needs to with these guys as soon as possible? Can he be protected? This is going to be a different offense. I'll be interested to see how it all looks. We don't really know. We don't really know how the attack's going to be. I do feel they're going to run the ball, though. I really do. Luke Getsy is going to run the ball, and that'll help Justin more than anything to take the pressure off. Cole Kmet, big year for him. That's a weapon. You got to make sure he develops, and Justin will have a lot to do with that. Darnell Mooney, forget about it, man. This guy is serious and wants to be a superstar, and he works at it like nobody I've ever seen. So he is committed, and he's getting a lot of attention for that too. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. It's it's a big giant slate, and we don't know how it's all going to look on day one. So that's exciting to me.
That is exciting. And by the way, speaking of Darnell Mooney, Peter Schrager on Good Morning Football on Thursday talked about him being one of the more underrated wide receivers in the game. So it's good to see him getting some recognition. And you talk about this slate, and I'll ask you this, and we'll wrap up with this. I hope you personally don't spend too much time on Bears Twitter because it'll drive you crazy because you see the wide range of expectations. What should fans, what should be the reasonable expectation for a Bears fan heading into 2022?
I have to say the word that's going to probably get me in trouble. It's patience. But
not with me. Not with me.
Listen, let's be honest. I mean, it's a retooling of the entire roster, and there's going to be more than what exists right now, as I alluded to at the start of the show. So they're going to pick the guys that are going to be what they envision to be the Bears are going to lead them eventually to a Super Bowl. But, it's asking a lot for Bears fans who've endured a roller coaster ride for decades, but the patience aspect of this, everybody's just going to focus on Justin's development. And that is the most critical piece for every team. So how he develops over the course of the season will lead us to more wins or more losses, depending on how it all works out. Learning this new offense, it seems to be an ideal fit for him. Can we all stay healthy? That's every team's mantra, obviously. But development, got to see development across the board and adjust quickly to the new schemes. I think the defense will have an easier time of it right away just because, from what I understand, it'll be a very simple system. See ball, get ball, and take the ball away and smack them in the mouth. So everybody can do that if they want to do that. If they have the heart to do it, they're going to want to do that. So, I never, ever, I know you're going to ask me for like a reasonable expectation in terms of wins and losses. I've never done that. So
I'm not doing that. Jeff, I would not do that to you. As the voice of I would not do it. I'm not going to do that to you.
No. Everybody always asks, well, how many wins? Talk to me the day before the season and tell me what the roster looks like, because I really don't know what the roster is going to look like. I think there'll be surprises along the way, and who knows what kind of moves can be made. But, my reasonable expectation is set a solid foundation for growth.
Yep.
And even Matt Eberflus has talked about it down to if you've ever built a home, you start with making sure the soil's right and the foundation's got to be poured right. That you got to do it the right way. There can be no quick fixes. There can be no shortcuts. And if they do that, I think the foundation for the future will be good. How's that for expectation?
I love it. I think we're in concert. I think that any level-headed fan, and I'll call out the people who don't agree with us as being non-rational, non-level-headed, but I think that's the right approach. And I think that any writer in the NFL who wants to say things like they're not setting up Justin Fields or he should look to get a trade or anything like that, I'm like, what are you talking about? The success of this team long-term is more important than what happens this season. And I think that's the most important
100%. And let's talk about Justin. I mean, Justin he's got to prove it too.
Yeah.
So he's got all the tools in the shed, but it's nothing is ever guaranteed.
Nothing.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Even
at that
first round
position.
draft pick.
Exactly.
That's very true. What's guaranteed though is you constantly delivering for Bears fans. I love that you're on the call for this team. It makes me
I
feel
appreciate
good. It makes me feel warm in my heart. You do such a great job. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I know you're busy. You got a ton of things going on. I hope that we can do this again some other time.
Absolutely.
Maybe if Tom will, allow me back into, I'd like to join you guys as well.
You are more than welcome. You are more than welcome. This is
anytime.
I wash your back, you wash mine. All right, we're
you
good.
Love it. All right, Jeff. Well,
keep the faith, keep the passion, Bears fans. We'll talk to you on the radio.
All right, sounds good. There he goes, Tom. The great. Oh my gosh, he's so good. The great Jeff Joniak, joining us here today. I'm sure it came across. I was very scared that whole time. I'm so nervous. I really do appreciate his calls, and I'll tell you this: I'm very fortunate to. I live in Southern California. We have great broadcasters. I listen to a lot of. Listen, this is between you and me. I listen to a lot of these. Now that he's gone, I can tell you the real story. He's great. I really do think he's the best. I love his call. And I thought of the first time I really started getting into listening to him, I'm like, gosh, he is so good. I mean, it's not a surprise. It's Chicago. It's one of the biggest media markets in the world. Like, of course, you should be attracting the top talent, but it's really a testament to this team. And I think it's been a great stabilizing force of hearing his call. So I do appreciate him being on the call. I do want to talk about a couple of things, though. Number one, the rookies will be here over the weekend, or depending on when you're listening to this, it might be going on as you're listening. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff coming out. The players' numbers came out, which I think was pretty cool. We talked a little bit about Velus Jones is going to wear number 12. Brisker is going to wear number 9. And Kyler Gordon is going to wear 6. 3, I know a lot of you might not put, Allen Robinson in there. I do. I think it's 3 iconic numbers outside of going 34 and some of the retired numbers, obviously, but that's 3 iconic numbers, at least for recent history. I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if somebody's wearing 22, it's always weird, or 33. It's always weird to see those numbers in rotation. I think that's pretty cool. So that'll be a lot of fun over the weekend. By the way, I know this came out over the last couple of days, probably the most over-reported story in the NFL right now. It's the whole notion of Ryan Tannehill. Can you still hear me? I don't know if I knocked there's my head. Hopefully, Sammy will send me a note if you guys can't hear me anymore and I'm just talking into the wind. But here's my thing. Ryan Tannehill, he came out and said, listen, it's not my job to prepare or to groom Malik Willis to be the starting quarterback, the guy who replaces me. And then everybody's taken aside. Kurt Warner came out and said, this is outrageous. Kyle Long came out and said, you know what? It's honestly up to the player to kind of mentor himself. And I think that there's probably a little bit of truth that lies in the middle. It's not the light of the force, the dark side of the force. There's the gray goo is in the middle. You know what I'm saying? If you're a big Star Wars fan, if you watch Rebels, you know what I'm talking about. I think, I work for a place where one of my colleagues was actively working against me and trying to sabotage me or whatever. And this person's no longer there, so don't worry about this. But, I get gutted a little bit when I hear things like, I'm not here to help him out. But in Ryan Tannehill's defense, your job is not to help him. Ultimately it comes down to the player himself. If you want to be willing to put in the work, to do what is needed to be done, there's only so much you can do. I have colleagues, I will help out anybody. And I always try to go above and beyond to help anybody who shows a willingness to succeed, who wants to get better. I'm happy to tell everybody, here's my secrets. Here's what I did. And then those people who go out there and do it, that I will be willing to help them out and help them along the way. Cause it all, rising tide rises all boats. I think what Tannehill was trying to say is as long as you're not an outright jerk to them, as long as you're not trying to sabotage them, then I don't think that there's any issue with what's going on. I think it's, hey, listen, I will be a leader I wish he would have answered that a little bit better, but I'll be a leader to this team. I will try to help Malik Willis get better, just as I want Derrick Henry to get better, as I want Robert Woods to get better, Treylon Burks to get, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like I'm here to help everybody. My goal here is to win a Super Bowl. I think the way that he said it ended up sounding not as great. I don't think he's out to ruin his career or anything like that, but it has been one of the more amazing stories that you can see. And so, you know what? It is what it is, but I don't know. I just wanted to address, I don't know. It was just a big NFL story that has been going on, but do want to take an opportunity right now to thank Jeff one more time for coming onto the show. Great conversation with him. We will be back next week. We'll be talking about everything that's been happening in rookie camp. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of an indication who's starting to separate themselves already. But as Jeff said, you know, this is going to be a little bit of a process. There is a learning curve. You know, there is going to be some growing pains with this team. They're switching to a 4-3 defense, which actually works to the benefit of a lot of our guys. I think they'll be in a better position to succeed. You know, I think of Gibson, you know, being there on the end, moving back to his natural defensive end position. There will be some cool stuff there. I think this will benefit a lot of people. But again, new coach, new system. This is why we get extra practice time as well. But I really do feel committed to the path that Ryan Poles has set forth. And I think that's the most important thing. So as you go along and you see people and members of the national media going out there and saying that they're doing wrong by Justin Fields, they're not helping him out, I am here to tell you, building a foundation for the future, building a team that can have years of sustained success is going to be much better for Justin Fields and the health of the Chicago Bears than flashy signings, than spending $90 million on Christian Kirk. And I know that's an outlier. I like the fact that Ryan Poles did not panic, did not go crazy, did not overspend, did not overcommit. He is taking a methodical, deliberate approach, and we can see it working. You are starting to see the pieces put into place. And that might not mean that we make the playoffs this year, but that's fine. If the foundation is solid and everything is set in motion, the coming years will be much better. So again, as Jeff said, practice patience. It's all going to happen. And I'll leave you with that. We'll see you on Tuesday for Take It to the Rank. We'll be talking about the Bears rookie weekend, who stood out, who didn't, and some all that cool stuff. And at some point, you know, we'll start to get into fantasy football. I was thinking about doing it today, but you know what? I was so nervous having Jeff in my presence. I didn't want to dive into that. But thank you for checking this out. Make sure you like, subscribe. If you enjoyed the podcast today, right there in the comments, just type the word sick. Just type the word sick. Maybe share it with somebody. Maybe tag somebody on Twitter. Maybe retweet it. Subscribe, do all that stuff. Want to thank everybody. Thanks to Jeff for joining us. Thanks to Sammy for putting this all together. And until next week, bear down.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.